Do you feel like you set your foundation for what you want to do going forward?
I think so. I think you always want to, have a solid year. Obviously, you want to get in the playoffs, right? That's the goal. The goal is to win the division and get in the playoffs, and we were right there. And to come up short, it was very disappointing, but a lot to learn from myself, everybody involved, so we can have a hell of a 2024 season.
The Indianapolis Colts were one of the most surprising teams in the NFL last season despite missing the playoffs, and that's largely due to the expectations the team had after only winning 4 games in 2022 and ending up with a top 5 pick in the draft. The consensus around the Colts was that they were likely going to be a pretty bad team for a couple of years while they rebuilt the team with more young talent. They moved on from Frank Reich, and the philosophy of the team really shifted from continuously going down the veteran quarterback route, players like Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan, to finally building the team the right way and drafting a young prospect to lead the new era. And for the Colts, that player became Anthony Richardson out of Florida, who they selected with the 4th overall pick. And Richardson was a super intriguing player coming out of college, but he was also very polarizing. It was apparent he had all the traits the elite quarterbacks in the league currently have: an amazing arm, fantastic size at 6'4", 250 pounds, and some of the best athleticism in the league, with a 4.4 40-yard dash and a 40-inch vertical at the NFL Combine. But combined with his physical attributes was also his lack of experience, and if he had enough feel for the position to truly be developed into an elite player. But the Colts ultimately decided he was worth the risk and brought him to Indianapolis, betting on his upside. To pair with him, they also hired new head coach Shane Steichen, the former offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. And if year 1 was any indication of Steichen's coaching ability, it seems like the Colts hit a home run. Steichen, only at the age of 38, moved up the ranks fairly quickly in the NFL, but really got most of his recognition for the work he did in 2020 with Justin Herbert, and in the 2 years he developed Jalen Hurts from 2021 to 2022. Hurts, similarly to Richardson, came into the NFL with some elite traits, but needing some refining to reach his true ceiling, and after a couple of seasons working under Steichen, he became the runner-up for the NFL MVP award. And I think now if you ask Philly to pick between Steichen and their current head coach Nick Sirianni, and a snap of the fingers, they would swap the two. It became very apparent this season watching the Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts that they missed his presence, and I don't think it's crazy at all to call Steichen one of the best offensive minds in the sport based off of his resume in the last several years. But unfortunately for the Colts, they didn't get to see a ton of action out of their investment this past year, as Anthony Richardson only played in 4 games, passing for 577 yards, 3 touchdowns to 1 interception, while also adding in 4 touchdowns on the ground. But in that short time he was on the field, it did appear that the Colts had something special. One valuable lesson I do think that was learned is to be a bit more mindful of all the design quarterback runs, but what to ask out of Richardson game in and game out. He suffered a concussion in week 2 in the first half against the Texans on a touchdown run, came back 2 weeks later and suffered a type 3 AC sprain in his right shoulder, which ended his season. I'm not too overly concerned regarding Richardson's injuries due to his size, but it is something to monitor moving forward if he can stay on the field for extended periods of time. But after Richardson's season-ending injury, longtime veteran Gardner Minshew took over under center, and the overall outlook of the Colts season changed. Already mentioned people's low expectations for the team heading into the year, but a talented rookie quarterback gave people a reason to tune in and actually care about the team. And I feel like once Richardson got hurt, the Colts weren't nearly talked about as much. In terms of their on-field performance, they'd fall to 3-5 after the first 3 Minshew starts, but finally picked up some steam in the middle of the season, getting people to take notice as they sat at 8-6 halfway through December. With 3 games to go, the Colts needed to win 2 to make the playoffs due to the surprisingly competitive AFC South featuring another rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud. After splitting the first 2, it was a battle for first place in the division on Saturday Night Football against the Texans in Indianapolis. After a deficit at halftime, the Colts would rally to tie the game at 17 apiece early in the 4th quarter and ended up having a chance to go down the field and win it, but a mishap between Minshew and backup running back Tyler Goodson on 4th and 1 ended the magical season. But now the Colts enter year number 2 of this regime, and this offseason is all about supporting their young quarterback. They currently have $79 million in cap room and own all of their selections in the 2024 NFL Draft. But before signing any other free agents, I expect the Colts to make some big decisions on a couple of their own big-time players set to hit the open market. Michael Pittman Jr., Grover Stewart, Kenny Moore, and Julian Blackmon are all looking for new deals, and it'll be interesting to see who the organization decides to bring back. Out of those 4, I believe Michael Pittman Jr. should be the biggest priority, simply due to the fact that he's a playmaker that Anthony Richardson can develop with. There aren't a lot of top-end wide receivers hitting free agency in March, so Pittman will be coveted by a lot of other teams. Still only at the age of 26, coming off of an 1,100-yard season, I think he's got the ability to be an X-wide receiver in the Colts offense. But it is not going to be cheap to bring him back. His estimated contract is around a 4-year deal worth around $90 million, but unless Chris Ballard plans on drafting a receiver number 15 in the draft, Pittman must be brought back in my opinion. In terms of the defenders, Blackman and Moore had career years last year, combining for 7 interceptions, while Stort's production was a bit down largely due to the 6-game suspension he had in the middle of the season. But the Colts defense as a whole was not a great unit in 2023, ranking 28th in points allowed per game. If the front office decides to only bring back one of them and start fresh on that side of the ball, I can't really say I blame them. But regardless of the specific decisions the Colts decide to make on those players, they're still going to have a good amount of money to spend on other free agents. Ballard is not known as someone who spends a lot on veteran players, but with the amount of money the Colts have, I do expect that trend to be broken and a couple of really awesome players to make their way to Indianapolis. Chidobe Awuzie is someone who could fill in and be the cornerback 1 for this defense, and there's also a couple of really good defensive tackles that they could pair with DeForest Buckner and Christian Wilkins and Justin Matabuke. My plan if I was Chris Ballard would be to spend the cap space in the 15th selection in the draft to improve the defense, but try and supplement the offense with some young players in the draft to have a core to develop with Richardson. I mean, offensively, the Colts don't have a ton of needs. They've got one of the best running backs in the league still in Jonathan Taylor, who got his contract last year and should be ready to get back to his 2021 Offensive Player of the Year form. If Michael Pittman Jr. is brought back, I like 2 of the receiving options with him and Josh Downs in the slot. The offensive line was back to form last year. PFF ranked it as the 3rd best in the league, and they only allowed 15 sacks all season. All 5 starters are expected back next year, so that should again be one of the NFL's top units. At tight end, it's more of a service by committee approach with some solid players in Kyle Granson, Mo Alley Cox, and Jelani Woods. Potential ways to improve the offense, though, would be to sign some veteran depth for the offensive line, since you can never really forecast what type of injuries may occur. Getting another dynamic wide receiver, someone who can stretch the field and provide a different skill set to the offense. Pittman is the X, Downs is the slot, and I think Alec Pierce is better served being the 4th wide receiver or someone used for specific route combinations due to his size, instead of somebody who's relied upon to provide a good amount of production. Some potential candidates in free agency for some deep threats are Marquise Brown, Calvin Ridley, Darnell Mooney, and Gabe Davis. With the Colts likely spending a lot of money to bring back Pittman, though, it's more likely they address that need in the draft. And in the 2nd round, potential targets could be Xavier Worthy or Troy Franklin. And I would love to see one of those young speedy receivers come catch some absolute nukes from Anthony Richardson for years to come. But I'm going to be super interested to see what the Colts do this offseason to build off of their 9-8 season from a year ago. The AFC South is going to be a bloodbath for the next several years due to all the stud up-and-coming quarterbacks, which is a little crazy to say because of how bad the South was for so many years prior to this. I mean, there was the Andrew Luck phase, then the Deshaun Watson phase, a couple of years when Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry were the kings of the division, but there hasn't been a time in recent memory when several teams in the division have had a young, promising quarterback and a realistic shot to make the postseason. But I still expect the Colts to once again be in the thick of things next year, and ultimately the health and development of Anthony Richardson will determine how much noise they can make. I'm intrigued with the infrastructure the team already has in year 2 of this rebuild. I love the head coach and Shane Steichen. I think Anthony Richardson has the potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in football. It really comes down to everything coming together and getting a few more impact players to get this team into true contention mode, and that all starts in a couple of weeks. But I want to know what you think about the direction of the Indianapolis Colts and what you expect from them in 2024. Do you agree with me and think they have a chance to be a scary team next season, or do you think they're still a few years away before they're ready to be a playoff team? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But subscribe to the channel if you are new, drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.